Hello, my name is Brittany, and I'm going to make videos talking about books. I want to start talking about like Stephen King books and some of what my favorites are and what I think is a good place to start if you want to read Stephen King, because maybe you've seen the movies but you haven't read any of the books. I've been obsessed with reading ever since I was old enough to read. So I guess maybe like 6. I love to read. I do it every day. I've done it pretty much every day since I learned how to read. And I got my first Stephen King book in high school. My best friend gave it to me, and it was Cell, which is still definitely one of my favorites. And then they made the movie out of it, and the movie was pretty good, but I always liked Cell because it's a good kind of take on zombies, like the zombie concept, and if that was to ever actually happen, and with the use of technology. That's basically the wrap of the book is technology, this frequency, kind of turns people into zombies, and it's crazy. It's a kind of a long one. It's not too bad. This looks longer because it's the paperback, but if you've seen the movie and you like to read, this is definitely one that I suggest you read. But that's the first one I ever got, and then I started reading like Jodi Picoult books and like girly books, those were really good too, but recently in the past like 2 years is when I've really started to pick back up Stephen King books, and I work a lot. I have kids, so I don't get to read as much as I want to, but I've probably read maybe about 20 in the past year. Any chance I get, I'm reading them. But it was the first one that I really started on when I started reading him again, because everyone's seen the movie. I've seen the old one, I've seen the new ones. It is one that it's a big book, and it's a lot of commitment. It took a while to get through this, but this is definitely not one I would start with first because it's pretty messed up. I mean, the movies are messed up, and the book is just a million times more intense than the movies. Stephen King has no fear, I guess. He just writes, he writes it all. But I'd say if you were like just starting to read a Stephen King book, the newer ones he's written are really good. Like The Institute, and then The End of Watch, Mr. Mercedes, and Finders Keepers. That's a really good series. And he just put out another one called Holly, and that's the main character. She's also in The Outsider. But I would start with those. I think those are good. If you start with these, you're going to want to start with either Finders Keepers or Mr. Mercedes and read End of Watch last, because Mr. Mercedes is definitely before End of Watch. So either one of these two you could read first. But yeah, read that one last. That kind of follows the series. If you read this one first, then it's going to run Mr. Mercedes for you. But if you read this one, it won't run that one. So yeah, those are good starters. I just read Pet Cemetery, which I know is one of his earlier books. And the movie is the old one. I don't think I've seen the new one, but the old one movie is really good, I'd say, in comparison to the book. But this is a kind of a shorter book. And I like this one a lot because in the beginning he talks about how he wrote this entire book based on, they lived in a house that was on a road where there was constantly big trucks going by. And he had a conversation with his daughter about it, if the cat got hit, And so he wrote this entire book based on not really fact, but kind of, I guess. He took his situation and made it into a fictional book. And that's probably what's the coolest thing about it is, you know, I'm sure it was hard to write because I guess things kind of could have played out that way. But it's a good one. The characters are great. You know, they've got their neighbors across the street and you really grow to love them. They play a really big part in the book. And you feel bad for him, you know. He's a doctor at a university, but he's a doctor, so he's, you know, he's smart, he's intelligent, they've got a nice house, they have a family, and it's really sad in the end. I don't want to ruin the end, but I mean, everybody kind of knows anyways if you've seen the movies. But it's a really good book. It's definitely worth the read. I would say another good one, kind of as like a starter book, would be Salem's Lot. I think they made a movie out of it. I haven't seen the movie yet. But this one, it's dark and sad, but it's not too bad, not like reading it. This has a good storyline too. You really fall in love with the characters, and then of course anytime anything bad happens, it's, you know, it hits you, you feel it. But I really liked Salem's Lot a lot. I read this one kind of early too when I started reading him again. This was one of the first ones I picked up, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good book. It's really well written, and it's also kind of that mysterious take on, you know, what if there are vampires, or what if there were vampires, stuff like that. It's crazy how much, if that was a real thing, how fast it could wipe out, you know, like a town or a city, how fast stuff like that spreads. You don't really think about it until you start reading books about it, and you're like, oh my gosh, what if that were real? You know, could you survive? You kind of get in the book like, well, what would I do? How could I help? Would I make it all the way till the end? You know, it's a good one, Salem's Lot. And I'm going to have to watch the movie, but if any of you have seen the movie, let me know, because I don't know. I tried to watch, because I did just read this book, Desperation, and I loved the book. Such a good book. I didn't think I was going to like it because, like, the cover, I always buy used books. The cover and then, like, the inside cover, I was like, ooh. It looks old. You can tell it's old, but I was like, I don't know. It's kind of like a tacky looking cover, you know? And then I couldn't put it down. I mean, I read it so much, so constantly, and I broke the spine on it, which I'm trying to get another copy because that makes me really sad. But I did watch this movie, and it's, with all book to movies, it's hard to watch because sometimes they will change crucial things that happen in the books, and when they make the movie out of it, they'll kill off a different character or something, you know, the ending will be totally different, or when they kill off a certain character, that changes like the rest of the movie to not match the book. And I mean, in the beginning it was close to the book, but then as the movie went on, I was just like, I don't know. I don't really like it too much. So if anyone's seen Salem's Lot, comment on it, because I want to know if I've been trying to kind of watch his movies with the books that I've read. So if it's a good one, I'll watch it. If not, then tell me so I don't watch it, because I don't want to lose 2 hours of my life when I could be reading. Desperation. There's another book that I'm trying to get. It's called The Regulators, and that's a book that he wrote as Richard Bachman. If you read Stephen King, you know that he wrote, I think it was maybe like 4 books under a different name, which was Richard Bachman. And back then, it didn't have Richard Bachman as Stephen King or Stephen King as Richard Bachman or whatever. But now, the newer ones, they do. So this one's kind of old too. It's The Running Man. And this one I really liked because It's kind of like this, I think it was written currently in this year. I can't remember if it was 2022 or 2023. So it's like set in the future. I think he wrote it 40 years ago. It's set in the future, and the world has just kind of gone to crap. The smog is so bad. Like, the air is toxic to breathe. Kids at like 5 are getting cancer. It's just really bad. It's hard to find work. They have new money. I think it was called new dollars. And so in general, it was a bad time to live. Either you were super, super rich, or you were stupid poor and you lived in terrible conditions and you basically had nothing. There's this competition that they start, and so you go in and you get tested, and depending on how healthy you are, you can do different kinds of competition. And if you make it all the way till the end, you beat it, then you get a bunch of money. If not, either they would kill you, or you usually died trying to compete, because pretty much everyone in this time frame was not healthy, because the food was so bad, the air was so bad, whatever. So it follows this one man. He's really healthy. He's married and has a daughter, and his daughter's been sick for a while, and medicine is really hard to come by because money is so hard to get. And I think it started out as like a cold or something, and then it developed into something even really bad. And the thing is it's easily fixable, but they just don't have the money for the medicine or to see a doctor. So he goes and he signs up for the games, and because he's so healthy, he's really smart, they put him in. The biggest game you can do is called the Running Man. And so that's what he does. And it's a cool book, reading like how difficult it was to play that game. And the thing about it was they would send a group of called hunters after you. And so the hunters would be trying to catch you, to kill you, to prevent you from winning. But if a regular person saw you, they could also restrain you, call the cops, like turn you in, and then they would get rewarded just so you don't win and win like, it was like an outrageous amount, like $1 million or something crazy, maybe even more than that. It's been a while since I read this one. But it's a really good book because it puts into perspective 40 years ago he wrote this book in this current time frame. And how crazy is that? What if that would have happened? It is kind of happening. Currently right now, the entire United States is struggling. Everything's so expensive. I mean, I'm sure quality of air right now, probably not all that great. I try not to get into politics, but or conspiracies. But it's a weird reality, to read this and think, oh, so weird that I'm in this age, or I'm at this year, and some of this stuff is kind of true, and it's written really well. And I think it's cool that he wrote a couple of books under a different name. I don't know why, maybe just to see if his books would do good even as somebody else, and they did. I mean, this is one of the best ones, The Running Man. I really like this book a lot. So this is an easy one to read too. It's sad. I mean, all of his books are sad, and there's always, the ending is either a humongous twist or it's just like you don't get any answers at the end. Some of his books just cut off and it's like, well, what happened? I need to know what happened. But that's the fun thing to me about reading Stephen King is he leaves you with a lot of questions, and I think that's good because it makes you really think about what you read, I mean, I've read books before where I read them and I put them down and then that's it, whatever. But I mean, so there's a couple of these I've reread a few times just because I liked it so much. And then every time I read it, I felt like I was retaining something different than the first time I read it. So yeah, I would definitely, The Running Man, this is a good one. And I'll pick one more for today, and then I'll go through and make another one later on. And I don't know how well this video is turning out. I've never recorded anything before. It's kind of awkward. But give me some feedback. If you want me to go in more detail about the books, I will. Just, let me know. Whatever you want me to talk about. If you have whatever you think, you just let me know. Right now, I'm currently reading Just After Sunset, and it's a bunch of short stories. There's another book that I read by him that's short stories, and it's called If It Bleeds. And I like short stories. He really packs a punch in a short amount of time. And I think this one, they made a movie out of this or something. But I think there's 3 short stories in here. Let me see. I think it's 3. I don't want to flip through the whole book trying to see. But the first one is Mr. Harrigan's Phone. That one is pretty crazy. This kid befriends this old rich guy that lives down the street, and he helps him around the house, and he reads to him every day because he's really old. The old man gave him a lottery ticket or a scratch off, and I can't remember how much he won. He won a certain amount of money. It was quite a bit, maybe $5,000 or something. And so he ends up buying Mr. Harrigan a phone, and he ends up dying. And then when the boy goes to the funeral, he puts the phone in the coffin with him. And for a few years after, he'll call him on the phone, and the phone will ring, which is impossible. And then he'll ask for something, and then stuff will happen. So it's pretty much the gist of the first one. It's pretty crazy. Because first off, it's not really possible, but also spirits, spirits are crazy. I guess if you could contact them, they would do stuff for you. I don't know. But then he comes to regret some of the decisions he makes because, some of it turns out really bad, and then he feels bad about it. The Life of Chuck, I think, is the second one. And that one was extremely crazy to me because the entire time you read it, you have one idea of what's going on. And then at the end, it's not anything about what you thought it was. I don't want to talk about that one. That's one that you guys should read on your own. That one's crazy. And then there's a couple other ones in the book. Those are the first 2, and I really liked those. And then If It Bleeds is also in this, which is the name of the book. And Holly is in it. Holly's one of the main characters in the Mr. Mercedes and Finders Keepers. So if you've read those and you haven't read this, then you should read this because he does a little short story with her in it. And everything he writes about her is awesome. I love the Holly character. She's really overcame and, went through a lot and come out way better than she was in the beginning. But yeah, so there's a couple of my favorites, and I think I have 20 books. So if you guys want to give me suggestions on what to read next, I'm not quite halfway done with this, but short stories I tend to read through a lot faster. So I'll probably have that read by next week. And then I've got quite a few more books. I'd like to talk about The Shining and Dr. Sleep, but another time. So if you have any suggestions for me, if you think I should describe more about the books, or I don't know if I'm rambling, tell me that too. I've never done this before. I just wanted to share some of my favorites. Just let me know in the comments, and yeah, suggestions. So thanks for watching. Bye.